Welcome back, guys. We are joined today by Richard Lane at Durham Lane. I discovered Durham Lane about 5 years ago when I was running my agency, and it was another agency that I wanted to compete with, and I wanted to beat you guys out. And eventually, I discovered after a very long time, these guys have, and a lot of the more kind of experienced agencies have so many built-up processes. They have such a big lead. They have such a good reputation that competing in that market is very hard, but you've shown a light on really how a successful entrepreneur does it. So, Richard, in 30 seconds, who are you? What do you do? And why should anybody stay on this podcast for the next hour to hear what you have to say?
Very good. Well, thank you for that intro, Shane. Richard Lane, co-founder and chief commercial officer of Durham Lane. We're a international SDR agency. We build white label teams for mainly mid-market enterprise customers, data, AI, technology, but most importantly, people
Yeah.
that deliver amazing revenue results for our customers. Why should you stay? I've spent my whole life in sales. I've built sales processes for many organizations. I've coached and many hundreds of salespeople and led many sales teams to success. So hopefully I've got something to give back.
So, guys, that's just scratching the surface. So, Richard built Durham Lane with his co-founder from two people to get this an agency to 120, if I'm right. And you guys have generated over 200 million in 200 million euros in qualified pipeline. Your team runs outsourced SDR operations for companies like Sage, HP, Deloitte. So you see inside more sales pipeline than almost anybody in the UK. And today we're going to get into how you spot the difference between pipeline that converts and pipeline that's just noise. We just touched on it before. So if
Yeah.
you can run a sales team, if you run a sales team, this one's going to be, going to change how you look at your numbers on a Monday morning. So let's talk about the accidental salesman, the happy trip up. You wanted to be a rock star.
Ah,
You've said sales gave you the same thing, performing, connecting with people, the creativity. At what point did you stop seeing sales as the backup plan and start seeing it as the thing you are actually meant to do?
you've done your research. I'm impressed, Shane. So yeah, from the age of 15, I was absolutely clear that I was going to be a professional musician. Um, and at the at the age of 23 or whatever it was, I actually realized that wasn't going to happen, and I started looking for a job. Part of um, part of that process led me moving back home to Oxford, where my folks live, and I managed to sneak into Oxford University Career Service, and I got put through an assessment. I don't quite know how I got in there, but I got into an assessment, and we came out the other end of that, and they said, Richard, we think you'd be great at market research. And I guess that sort of pissed me off later on because no one recommends sales, Shane. You know this, right? No one
Yeah.
recommends sales as a profession, and we see sales as a profession to be proud of. And
Yes.
I've had an amazing career, amazing life, partly through being in sales and the success I've had with sales, which is I call it the happy trip up club. I fell into it, um, found that I was really good at it. Um, I listen really well. I put my feet in the shoes of the other person. That's just my sort of DNA, I guess. And I'm diligent. And I think if you bring those things together, then and being curious, then you've got a really great chance of being successful. And um, I've done lots of work with universities over the years, and sales is not considered, still really not considered a graduate degree. So one of the things with Durham Lane that perhaps as a founder I am most proud of is the number of people that have come through our business,
Mhm.
sometimes being in a similar place to me that didn't know what they wanted to do after university. We teach them well, we get them understanding the power of being in sales and what it can lead you to. And before you know it, they've got jobs with organizations that frankly they wouldn't have got an interview with the recruitment company interviewing on behalf of that enterprise organization. So we've had people come to Durham Lane, spend 18 months, 2 years with us, whatever it might be, and are now um, feet under the table, working super hard and successfully at some of the biggest companies in the world.
I've
What's
witnessed it.
not to love about that, right?
I've witnessed it, and sales, honestly, even for me, I Sales gave me the opportunity. That was many years ago. So I was fortunate that I got a chance to move to the US at a very young age. At the age of 13, I got a chance to move to the US. My dad was an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. So I went over there, and the town we moved into, the majority of the parents were always traders. They were always traders,
Right.
stockbrokers, financial advisors. And then you had your pick of the mill, your pick of the mix with your lawyers and your kind of somewhat of your entrepreneurs. And I never knew in my life how much sales relates to the life of an entrepreneur, the element of entrepreneurship. And what I quickly found was I wanted to get into stockbroking, being a trader. But I didn't make the right choices in my early years. In my 20s, I didn't make the right choices, and I eventually found my way in a place where I was a pizza delivery driver. I tried to trade stocks again, and it was no good at it. Sales gave me the platform to rise like above flatline, right? It was the
Yeah.
first, like you, it was the first opportunity I had. I came home from the US. I had a job at Marcus Evans. I'm sure you've heard Marcus Evans, the chop shop over there. Had no idea about sales at all, nothing at all, but they gave us 3 days to learn your script, your pitches. And I had my first pitch, and it was to a Polish guy trying to sell him a financial trading course. I was awful. If I heard it today, I was so bad, but the floor stopped. And they were like, "How do you have so much confidence?" And I was like, this is for me. This is 100% for me. I'm a selfish like person like that too. I love the attention. So I want to talk about you though. With two people to 120, I maxed out. I waved my red flag and my white flag at 15 people in my agency. You and Lee started this in 2011 with a founding mission to make people proud to be in sales. 15 years in, and you're running outsourced sales for some of the biggest companies in the world. What was the
Yeah.
hardest phase of that growth?
Now. um, um, yeah. I mean, it's a interesting thought. I mean, there are. I don't know. I mean, I think it's. I don't really. I think I don't reflect enough. I'm a very reflective person, but sometimes I don't reflect on this journey because I guess I'm in it at the moment. But every phase has been difficult. I think there are. I sort of think of like when you're going from 2 people to 25 people, you're the gang, you're this little tribe, you're in it together, it's down the pub, sorting everything
Yeah.
out on an evening, you're coming at all these ideas, aspirations, um, a brilliant time. We've got such fun, company trips, we've got really fond memories of all of that. 25 to 50, you need more processes, you need some people that are willing to manage other people, but it's still fairly contained. You still know everyone. It's still, you're sort of in the weeds. You can still do the company trips. It's just starting to creak around the edges a little bit from a social point of view because, take 50 people to Ibiza and things could seriously go wrong, right? So starts to get a bit more tricky, and then
Yeah.
when you go from the sort of 50 to 100, then you become a proper company. You have to become more of a machine, and I
Hmm.
actually really like that. I've always felt very comfortable in corporate land. So I like process, I like structure, I like progression, I like seeing people move and do different things and have different responsibilities. But it's definitely not for everyone. Um, and as you mentioned, some of the customers we work with, if I think back today, day one to 365, and I think of just this year in terms of the size of companies that we win and some of the obligations we have from a security, from a data, from a GDPR, from a compliance and confidentiality basis, we're working with some of the biggest companies in the world, and
Hmm.
every time I sign those DocuSigns or PandaDocs, whatever you use, um,
Yeah.
I just think, isn't that amazing that
It's
people
lovely.
people are putting their trust in Durham Lane as a business,
Yeah.
and that other thing I said to you before around not only have we got some of these just huge brand names that put their faith in Durham Lane as a business to help them grow their business, but we've also got people that have been with us on the journey for 10, 12 years, and
That's incredible.
they've built careers through Durham Lane, and I still see Durham Lane as this little company. So yeah, lots of things to be proud of for sure.
So How do you sell for others while selling for yourself? And I'll unpack this a little bit. There's a meta challenge most people don't think about with a sales agency. You have to sell your own services and deliver results for your clients at the same time. So walk me through a moment where those two things pulled you in opposite directions.
Yeah, so I think it's sometimes harder than that. So when we started Durham Lane, we had my little consultancy that I put together with Lee's little consultancy was training, coaching, and consulting.
Hmm.
So I've
Hmm.
selling at higher levels, our methodology that came from my experience in the first couple of years. Um, so when you're selling your business, you have to be apps. I feel this pressure still today, Shane. Every time I'm on a discovery call, every time I'm on a negotiation, every time I'm going to a client review, I'm thinking we have to be the best version of ourselves
Yeah.
because that's what people expect of us. And we do get some great comments from customers saying, "I love your tenacity. If you're going to do this, if you're going to do this as well for me when you're doing it for you, then I'm in good hands." So I had that about
Yeah.
one of our team the other day, which was a great moment. So and you'll know how this feels, right? You've got to sell your own business in order to win the business to then sell their business. And I know in the early days there were definitely times when people said, "But hang on, I've bought Richard Lane, but I'm not getting Richard Lane. He's not doing the dials for me and stuff." So
Yes.
you'll recognize that as a challenge, and it was. And so part of our job now is to make sure that it's not all about me or Lee or the management team. It's about the people in the business, and
Hmm.
we've got some just amazing people in the business, and there's no one in the business I would be afraid to put in front of our customer. And I think that as part of the sales journey is really important because they need to know who their client delivery lead is. They need to know who
Yes.
their client delivery manager is. They need to know who's going to lead the account. They know who's going to account manage them. And then it becomes this collective that is looking after them as a customer.
I think it's the transparency, the transparency and communication between an agency and a client. When it is lacking for any reason, whether it's reporting KPIs or data, that is where I believe the relationship breaks down the most. The second I remember there was one guy, he wanted to get his business going. He started it. It was like the last money. He couldn't even tell his wife he spent it. So he was on our ass every day. And
Yeah.
you said you was gonna do $200. You did 198. Why? What? Where were the? I'm like, what? How is
Well,
this happening?
do you know, and that's another great differentiator, Shane, because when you start out, you're typically working with startups and very small
Yeah,
companies, and yeah, we're still privately owned as a business, so every pound we spend is half of mine. So
yeah,
when you're working with a small business, the money is worth more to them. So it
yeah.
makes it even harder when you're delivering,
Mm.
and it makes our responsibility even bigger. So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough world to work in there.
And it all resorts down to what's inside the pipeline, though. Everything is coming down to what's in the pipeline and what the CRM never tells you. And when you're working with a client, that is the discrepancy between both sides, where I have all this data and you are very process driven and you're systematic. And when you hand over a flawless process with a lead that is really, really good, and then the company inheriting it is it's not a dig, but the company inheriting it is typically not designed to inherit the lead in the fashion that you propose it to, as in how you pass it over. So the way they manage it is two different worlds. So when your team walks into new client sales operations, they walk into it all the time. When you open up a client CRM for the first time, what's the first thing you look at that tells you where the real leaks are?
Yeah, we look sort of as part of our discovery, we've built out a diagnostic process really to
Yeah,
try as we've shifted our business to outcomes. So
yeah,
we've moved from being time materials to more outcomes based, and so
hmm,
data is critical. So
yeah,
sales velocity is the key. So you can't be screaming and shouting at your agency on a 6-month contract that hasn't delivered any revenue when you told us up front that your sales cycle is between 9 and 18 months. But actually that does happen. And so there are four things that I always look at. I talk about inputs, outputs, outcomes, and insight. And the inputs is, the ICP, the data enrichment. We're doing loads of work in that place at the moment, which is really
Mm.
fascinating. The outputs is what's in our gift. So that's the calls we make, the emails we send, the omni-channel messaging that we put together, the people how we engage, etc. The outcomes are the bit that you as the customer are really super interested in, which is
Yep.
the meeting, the qualified, meaningful meetings that you create
Yeah.
for my sales team. But
Yep.
then really importantly, point number 4, which most people forget, is insight.
Yes.
Because no matter if I was my customer, no matter whether someone says yes or says no, I want to understand why. And so every line of data has got value and insight behind it. And I think that is something that agencies miss a lot, because a customer is paying you good money to do an important job, and that job is really all about generating revenue and creating leads, etc. But it's also about enriching data, building data, making
Hmm.
sure that you're in front of the right people, ideally at the right time. So
Hmm.
that that insight piece is key, and I think that's where a lot of our value comes from. And I wrap that back to a point you were talking about earlier, and I talk about partnership with a capital P. Um, if we don't have partnership with the customer, invariably it doesn't go well. And you know that people
Yep.
outsource because they've got a problem. That's no good. If you're outsourcing to us because you've got a problem, but you don't want to engage with us, we'd rather not have your work, because it's not going to be successful, and that's no good for us. We're looking for long-term relationships.
It is, and it's always the kind of the notion that they keep you at arm's length because it's like, I'm sure you felt this in the early stages, maybe it's like they treat you as like they treat you as a vendor. They treat you as a vendor and they don't take it seriously. And then it's literally just an information pack between the individual who's bought the service and then their team of reps that they really don't interrogate. And it's like, are you really interested in actually doing this, or has your CEO told you to just go hire an agency to fill your quota? Like, which one really is it? And I think that's always some of the biggest challenge. So this is a really important thing that I found as a big problem when I was running my agency. Many deals are lost. Many deals are lost, and it's only in the seller's head. So, can you give me a real example of that? A deal where everyone thought it was moving, but the customer was never actually in.
As in moving to Durham Lane as a
Yeah.
partner. Yeah, I mean, I think that comes. Yeah, it comes back to if you're single threaded, right? So my call before this was an internal one about multi-threading. The um, buying community has just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So actually, if you are working with a sales director who thinks this is a great idea, that's great. But
Mhm.
who else is involved in this process? So yeah, we've messed up and had that lots of times. I think what we try and do now is particularly but also then once in. I think we've been quite good at it pre-initial contract. What we're getting much better at is that once we are contracted, then it's then exploring the organization, because we know at some point a CFO is going to press a button and go, what return has been created? And if they've not been tracking it in CRM, or
Yeah.
if worse, they've been tracking it, closing it lost, reopening a new opportunity and saying it's self-generated, and there's no Durham Lane tag on it, which is where
Oh,
RevIntel comes, then maybe that's
wow.
that's a big challenge for us. And by that point, you're sort of on the back foot and it's too late. So you need to get there early. You need to make sure systems all set up right. And that's hard, um, particularly as you work with bigger and bigger enterprise organizations. Getting access to their platforms is tough, but you have to do everything you can to make sure that. And that's why we focus more on revenue than on lead creation, right? It's leads opportunities, great, but
Yeah.
actually it's about the revenue at the end of the day.
Mate, I have not even thought about. Today's the first time I've ever even heard that a rep. There is a likelihood that a rep does would. Oh my
Oh
gosh!
well, so you've probably been the unfortunate recipient of that.
Yeah.
We've seen. I wouldn't say we've seen it a lot, but we've definitely seen it where, and what's interesting, and this comes back to partnership, is that we don't see it, but our customer support stakeholder sees it and corrects it. And so we've got one of our longest serving customers who there was a phase where reps were closing lost our opportunities and then setting them up again as a net new self-gen.
Wow, these sales guys they're getting smarter. They are getting very clever. Wow. So let's ask you this. Be interested to be interesting. Your whole methodology, a lot of the methodology is built on asking questions and not pitching. I am even the other day, man. I was just like, I finished the call and I was like, oh my God, mate, you didn't shut up. Like, you talk so much and you know you're supposed to listen, but sometimes you catch yourself off. So you
Yeah.
call it be interested to be interesting. How do you train an SDR team of 120 people to actually do that when their first instinct is to talk about the product?
Yeah. So selling at a high level is our methodology. Being interested to be interesting is mantra number three. We've got 10 mantras, which are amazing. And my son's recently become an SDR, and I've given him the mantras and said, learn these, and Magic 35, our qualification tool. So the interesting thing is, I always say to prospective customers that we don't need to be experts in your business, but
Yeah,
we need to be experts in why somebody should be interested, because that helps you not being a product monkey, right? So
yeah,
the challenge normally, what happens normally is that, and I think it's changing, but you join a job in sales, you get 2 weeks of product training, or maybe 2 months of product training, you get no sales training, and then you go out on the floor, and all you really know how to do is talk about your product, which actually no one frankly cares about.
yeah,
They're interested in the stories, they're interested in the why, they're
yeah,
interested in who else is using your product and
yeah,
why they're using it and what benefit they get. So
yeah.
we just reverse engineer it all back. So we just say, well, we need to know why somebody should be interested and what difference it can make to them and who else is using it like them. And once we have all of that, then as a and then when we've trained our teams from a question-based and consultative methodology, which is selling at a high level, um, our job is to just be interested and to be inquisitive and to ask questions. And Magic 35, which is our qualification framework, gives them gives them that ability to understand where they need to go next and what sort of information they need to capture.
So I want to touch on Magic 35. That was the next question, but I want to talk about what's changing and what isn't. So AI won't pick up the phone. You've been quite vocal that AI isn't replacing cold calling. I was fortunate enough 3 years ago to work with a company that started on the basis of building and developing AI SDRs. I brought 15 CEOs of those agencies to share their data with this company and get it going, only to find out in month seven that the market and the US had said robocalling is illegal. They had to pivot the entire strategy. So I know firsthand that it is not happening and it is frowned upon and there's a lot of red tape around it. So everyone else is telling SDR leaders to automate everything. What have you seen that makes you push back on that?
So, as you'd expect, I ran a pilot last year. I built an AI SDR. I ran a pilot. I made loads of mistakes, right? So
Yeah.
classic thing. I got more interested in. It was like I had this great person, and I was just giving. We called her Geordie. We were giving her
Yeah.
loads of information, and I was really pleased with her. You know, I thought she's great, and she answers my questions, and she's got a bit of lag time, but it was okay. You know, it was like all right. Um,
Yeah.
what we didn't think about was the campaign, which is ridiculous when you think of Durham Lane as business, but actually, so it totally fell on its face. And
Mhm.
I think you know, I'm a massive fan of AI, and I see
Yeah.
huge development. I also think we've got to be careful. I did a post on LinkedIn the other day saying don't let yourself become an empty vessel, because
Yeah.
you can almost get away with doing nothing if you just write a prompt these days, and that, you know, that's not good for your brain. Your brain needs to be exercised if it's going to grow or stay as strong as it is. So we've got to find a way to keep thinking. I imagine a world where I mean, and this is so sorry, roll back a little bit. When I just to date myself, when I'd not become a rock star and I got my first job in London, 1996, I did what our team do now, right? And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day. I spoke to people every day.
Yeah.
I had conversations on the phone. It was just the beginning of email. That dates me as well. But I spoke to people every day. And now
Hmm.
you've got people in the role of SDR that never speak to anyone. You've got people that maybe have do 100 calls, and maybe they speak to 5 or 6 people, right? And if it's good, they might speak to 10.
Yeah.
Um, so I sort of feel like we're all like rushing with technology to catch up to get back to where we were 30 years ago, which is sort of a bit of a shame. But the world has got more complicated. I think there are so many great use cases. The bar in sales is just getting higher and higher and higher. Like
Yeah.
if you go into a discovery meeting now with no knowledge about the customer,
Yeah.
shame on you. Shame on
Yeah.
you, because actually through Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever, you could have a briefing document built for you in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So there is no excuse not to know. When it comes to AI voice, a lot of change in terms of legality and banned in certain places. I think for inbound, it could be really interesting because I think people, if they've got a question, are getting more and more attuned to just asking chat or asking a person. I don't think you mind so much, but I do think outbound, there is something about the humanness that is still really, really important. But I
Yeah.
should also differentiate in the fact that I think systems and technology have let the SDR BDR become a voiceless role, and we are very much phone first. Um, you cannot do what we do and create what we create without speaking to people. And I think over the
Yeah.
last 10 years, people have just been hiding behind their keyboards, or
It is.
not even hiding behind their keyboards. They were just doing what everyone else did, and so they've never had to learn the skills. And what I always say to every Durham Lane that joins us is that the skills we teach you will last you forever. You know,
It
they
is.
will last you throughout your career, they'll last you in your home life, whatever it might be. But that ability to prospect, to network, to engage with someone that you've never spoken to before, and to be able to interrupt them in a meaningful way and have a short, concise, interesting conversation where you capture their attention just for a couple of minutes. Priceless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, building that. I will never forget it. It was for me. It was. I realized the moment in 2019 when I was making cold calls, and I would cold call these oil and gas service companies who were selling to EPCs. And we were a big company. Global Data was the company we worked at,
Oh, yeah.
and it was huge, right? It was, but they didn't know the name. And then I thought to myself, I was like, hold on a second, I'm generating over 600 grand for these guys. I don't even get all of it. I get 10% of that, and they still don't know me. So, what's going to be the difference whether I call and just say I'm Shane Mahi Consulting, or just make up a cool name? I made up the name Sales Driven, and they're like, oh, that's a very cool name. I was like, yes, it's a very cool name. I've been doing it forever. I landed my first 3 clients in the first couple of weeks of starting my business. Why? Because I had Cognism. When James Islay first built the cold caller and the
Yeah.
dialer when it first came in, bring on 12th call. Gary Montgomery, still remember him to this day, of Agile Technology, the worst opportunity we could have got because we were trying to sell a named IT services based on the name of the CEO and going to
Right.
big banks. RBS was the only company they had, and we had to go to all these banks and say, yeah, do you know Gary Montgomery? No, we don't know him.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we want to sell you his services, and we were very amateur junior at that time, and it ended up being a great learning experience, and that's where we, like you know yourself, you find your fit, you find your ICP, and we
Yeah.
quickly found out that the bigger companies that do have bigger budgets, that are in tuned and ingrained in the process, they will be your most profitable kind of opportunity. So ruthlessly disqualify. Your Magic 35 framework is designed to help reps qualify hard and disqualify fast, which is probably the most powerful thing you do in any business. How do you know by mid-quarter whether the deals in your client's pipeline are going to close or whether your team is chasing ghosts?
Compelling event. So
Elaborate.
one of our 7 criteria, Magic 35, is compelling event. This came at my career in software sales. If we didn't know the outside force driving someone to make a decision, and actually sometimes our customer didn't know the outside force that was driving them to make a decision, the deal doesn't happen because people walk more, psychologically, people walk away from a negative situation more quickly than they walk towards a positive one.
Yeah.
The compelling event, the outside, very simple. What's the outside force driving you to do something different? If it's not strong enough, people tend not to take action.
Yeah.
And in order, our biggest our biggest slowdown in sales, or our biggest risk of a deal ever happening, is just not enough of a compelling event, and so it
It,
doesn't happen.
it's very true, very true. So if a sales leader is watching this right now, they've got a pipeline that looks healthy on paper, but they don't trust it. What's the one thing they should do this week to figure out what's real?
Well, what they could do is they could pick up the phone to the prospect and say, let's say you're the prospect, Shane, lovely to speak to you. I've been working with Richard, who's I know has been helping you through this challenge, and we're really excited about solving with you. We were just doing a review earlier, and I was talking to Shane about talking to Richard about your business, Shane, and we were just sitting there pondering what's driving you to make this happen.
My team is
And then
behind on target.
silence, right? Silence, and then it's like, well, what would they typically say to that? What do you mean? Or something,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
go, well, what's the one thing we know is really important is, in order for people to take action, there needs to be an impending reason for change. So, what's yours? And then they might start saying, well, it's a board initiative, and then again, be interested to be interesting. Well, okay, well, that's fascinating. What we found with other customers is this, that, and the other. When does your board meet take place, or what are the timings they've given you? And they might say, well, we're taking our shortlist to the next board meeting. Or when is that? Well, it's in May or in June, sorry. And you then look at your rep and go, you forecast this for May. That ain't happening.
So get some truth behind it. I think that's a great way to look at it. So one thing, last question. You wanted to be on stage with the guitar. You ended up building a company that puts other people on stage. I've watched somebody go to a very big company and be a rock star at that company from Durham Lane. I've had dinner with him in London. It was, what, only a couple of years ago. But what would the 15-year-old Richard think about where you ended up?
Probably, what a boring loser. No. I think, no, I think the 15-year-old me would go, I like that. That's good, right? So
Hmm.
I sort of, I've definitely made peace with not being a rock star. I think it would have been a disaster for me. So I think, the bad vibes that people get through,
Hmm.
I think it would have been very difficult for me. I've made, I imagine, a lot more money than I would have made if I'd been a professional
Yeah,
musician, frankly.
yeah.
Um, I've done some wonderful things. I've got an amazing life. So I think, and I'm incredibly fortunate and lucky and blessed for what I have. So I think my 15-year-old self would say, yeah, I'll shake hands on that. Keep playing, keep practicing, and it's never too late. Although my kids now would go, don't you dare get in a band now. But it's still, maybe it can still happen, Shane. We do have the Durham Lane Blues Experience,
Yeah.
which played once at a Christmas party about 8 years ago and never returned.
Oh my God. Well, look, Richard, that was an incredible episode. I really, really thank you for the time. Any last words?
um, Keep selling. Selling is an amazing profession, profession to be proud of, and if we can help you with your revenue generation needs, then durhamlane.com.
Where can they speak to you? Where do you advise people to come
LinkedIn,
speak
yeah,
to you?
LinkedIn. Love chatting to people about sales process, everything that we do. Obviously, I've got my own podcast, Inside the Funnel, which you can find at durhamlane.com. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this, Shane. Thank you for having me on. I love the conversation.
Thank you, dude. Thank you very much. That's the pod, guys. That's a wrap.
Take
Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this episode and staying here the whole way through. If you like what you saw, click subscribe. It'll take you 2 seconds. It helps me reach amazing guests and deliver valuable content for you. And if you ever want to find out what we do as a business, go to www.gorevintel.com, and that is the place where we help you make decisions that are backed by intelligence, and it's for founder CEOs. That's it for me for now. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.